I just like what everybody is saying. It's like it just proves on why we, push forward and develop this and everything. Because it's like, you hear the different sides and everything, and then you also hear going through the same thing but taking a different path for everybody. Like one side chose to dive deeper for understanding, another chose to kind of like shelter or whatever. It's just as amazing at two people will go through the same experience but have two different outcomes to it. And that's where we're at with like our kids. We try to establish confidence in them. It's not really about race, it's about really accepting like who you are and where you come from and the identity of you as a person, so to say. Society puts too much on, well, you got to choose, or you're going to be shamed, to put your identity to the side. Like for my boys, just going through what they went through in school, being called black and stuff, and they would get in trouble because they would stand up for themselves. Not the fact that they was embarrassed of being black. It was the fact of, you're identifying one side of me. They wanted more so to tell them, this is who I am, this is both sides. You just can't call me black. And we had to sit down and have a conversation and tell them, the world is going to view you as a black man. Growing up, you're going to be viewed that. But that doesn't mean that you are just that. And then to explain to them and teach them, both sides of the situation, more so with what you did, Mike. Like, I really love the fact that, you like dived right in and come to a self-awareness, to kind of understanding. And I think that's where it comes, the bottom line is just understanding. Just people fear things they don't understand, and then they don't want to even dive in or come to terms and accept to hear one another.
Absolutely. So kind of transitioning from that, we wanted to hear, what would you guys say may be a difficult situation that you may have went through with your children, and how did you navigate through that? I know you kind of spoke a little bit about them being in school and going through this period of time and having you maybe show up to the school and that be an issue. Was there one thing that you can kind of remember that kind of stood out for you guys, and then what type of teachable moment did you make that, what came of it?
I mean, that whole school experience was hard for us because, I was their mom, so I was taking them to school and I was picking them up, and I can remember knowing that they were embarrassed that I was there to pick them up because I was the only one who looked like me, and they were the only one who had a mom that looked like me. And I can remember one time one of them had asked me to just wait in the car. That we would come and meet you at the car, and I was like, no, I have to sign you out. Like, you're too little to just come and meet me at the car. But I felt bad because I don't want them to feel that kind of way. I didn't want them to be embarrassed, because this is the reality of their life, even though it's not the reality of the majority of the rest of the school. So, I mean, we talked about that. We talked about the fact that they didn't have to be embarrassed, that this was their life and this is what it was, but it was hard for them. And I felt bad because it's something that they had no control over.
Absolutely.
For me, with the age difference between the 14-year-old and 16-year-old and the 10-year-olds, they do different things, they react differently. So, like with the 14-year-old, he tends to try to, gravitate more towards his black heritage, and he says some inappropriate things at times to try to get that point across. Like, I remember he was working on a homework assignment where he had a colony, and he had to sell this colony to somebody and say how the colony was going to be profitable, and he said he would enslave white people to do it. And his grandmother was there, who's white, her mother. And I'm like, that's not, I understand what you're doing, but that's not appropriate in front of, watch the way you word it and say it, because that's inappropriate. And he didn't understand that, and I had to explain to him why. Just say it differently, don't, word it differently. People are sensitive. That's a sensitive thing, race. And with the younger ones, the 10-year-olds, we allow them to express their opinions and their emotions. Whereas black people might call it talking back. You know, you can't respond in certain fashion. So I had to explain that to them. When you're around, you know, this side of the family, yes, this is acceptable. But you're around this side of the family, if somebody says something, don't question. Just do. And it was hard for them to come to grips with that. Cause I'm like, well, this is normal here. Why isn't this normal?
Right.
Because the
Same
culture,
conversation, but different outcome.
right. The cultures are different, and that's just the way, you know, we're raised. So this is viewed disrespectful, and you gotta understand it. When you get around my side, do this. When you get around this side, this is okay. And that's about it for me. I mean, and they pretty much they understand that, and they're gonna. I feel like they're gonna have to go through that with life. Wherever you go, certain neighborhoods, certain places, certain things are acceptable, certain things aren't.
I can see the difference between our younger kids and our older kids, and I think it's really based off, you know, the experiences they're having in school. Because Derek and Bri went through what they went through in the school that they were in, it was different for them. Whereas the triplets in Norristown, the majority of their friends are mixed. A lot of them are very similar to them. So when they go to school, they identify with a lot of the kids in their class because most of them have white moms and black dads, or vice versa. Most of their friends are mixed. So it's different for them. I don't think they feel bad about themselves the same way.
Okay. So their stories are different. And it's crazy how same household, same parents, just different experience. Absolutely, absolutely.
The biggest thing is just them being young and getting them to understand kind of nuances of systems versus individuals. You know, so it's like, okay, like, you know, we know white supremacy is real. We know racism is real. We know that, you know, white people are socialized to believe a lot of things about non-white people. You know, and your family is no exception. You know, and so it's been interesting with them, particularly like, you know, when they have racist experiences with their grandmothers or other people in their family, to get them to understand, like, all right, this is why these folks think what they think, and this is, you know, how you have a responsibility to talk to them. Like, don't let them off the hook, because they need to know this, like, right now.
Right.
But also, like, you need to have a certain degree of patience because of the fact that, you know, the way the system is set up is that they don't have a motivation or a reason, except for the fact that they're in our family, to actually learn about these things. You know, I think about the countless conversations I've had with family members because they just don't know anything. You know what I mean? Like, they're not taught these things in school. You know, like, that's what keeps the system going. You know, I've had countless conversations with my cousins that don't know anything about slavery. They have no idea what black folks been through. They know nothing. You know, it's because they go to school in these, you know, white majority districts that, you know, have a vested interest in keeping, you know, white people ignorant of what other people go through, so they can justify the treatment of black people. And so it's just conveying that to my young children, you know, because they're 7, 4, and 8 months, so little babies, about how, you know, you might be raised in like a very positive black household where you understand your history, you understand these things, but you have to be patient, because even though you might get this, your friends might get this, you cannot expect your white family members to get this as well. You know what I mean? Because they're being given a different type of message for a different type of reason, you know? And so that's kind of been a challenge, particularly with my 7-year-old, because he's really sharp. It's getting, you know, calling the dogs off, like, hold up, no, hold it, no, okay, you know, that's your cousin, just stop, you know, because she's ready to call everything with a child of God and go in about, like, hold, okay, you know, like, that's still your, like, let me talk to you about this. Maybe you want to word it like this. Maybe you want to ask some questions. Maybe you want to invite them to look at something with you. You know what I mean? They have that empathy, which I feel like has been a really valuable lesson for myself. That I'm seeing with my kids is how to be empathetic towards people's humanity, even though they might have some beliefs that compromise your humanity. It's like, how are we going to get back to that level of clarity?
I love that. And I think that that's the most.
I gotta do the same thing with the kids. I'm like, no, listen.
Right.
I tell you unfiltered truth, but don't you go out there like they can't handle.
Right, you gotta know when to roll that out. Right.
And that's the key point I think you kind of touched on, and you guys did too. It's the education and it's the conversation. If somebody has a stereotype or has a bias or sees things one way, if we come at them aggressively, or we're angry and we're screaming and we're yelling and we're this, and we're not having a conversation of really educating them, well, this is slavery, this is what it looks like, this is why, you know, we feel the way that we do. I think that's where we can grow. I think that's where we can change the course of the way things are going, by really having a conversation and educating people on, you know, what it looks like.
Man,
Gotta have patience.
And like I said, like, you know, for me, this is with my grandmother. You know, like my grandmother, you know, she's the only grandparent I ever knew. Like I said, she lived with us for a while. And, you know, I really resented her at one point in time for, you know, how she carried my whole community. And over time, like, you know, we became some of the closest people out of everybody because I had to learn how to deal with her. You know, I had to learn how to talk with her. And she learned things over time. And that really taught me a lot because, you know, it's that tension between, like, this is my elder.
Right.
I can't, like, dismiss her. But at the same token, it's like she's representing everything I'm against. And, you know, we were able to kind of resolve that through time. So I think that was a valuable experience.
Awesome.
I wish I was raised in one of your families. I feel like I was gypped. I felt a lot of shame growing up because I didn't bring this stuff up to anybody. Because nobody in my family ever talked about it, I didn't feel like I could bring it up or express how I was feeling or what I was going through with anybody. So I really had nobody to confide in or relate to. There was nobody else that was mixed like me when I was younger growing up. I mean, there are other light-skinned black people, but they didn't have the same experiences, so it was just really hard. And yeah, I wish somebody had sat down and explained things to me, but that's why it was easier for me to blend in. I just kind of became a chameleon, and like I said, I was just fluid with what I did what I had to do to survive and get through, you know, every day from the TV.
She said the keyword chameleon, because that's how I felt like growing up. Like at the fact, like I hated the fact of being rejected. Like my own people didn't want me, but not being able to. You already have a difficult quest of who am I as a person
In general.
but then to say who am I and being mixed is just, it's like there's so many worlds to dive into and not knowing and stuff like that that was the tough part.
I don't think I ever figured out how to
that's the
But you
tough
know
part.
what? And
my dad, he'd say, listen, God made you like a chameleon. You can blend with everybody, you know, like, I didn't understand that until like growing up and then, you know, transition into different people. Like in any setting, I can just, not switch, I can blend with my surroundings. You know, it's not like, not at the sacrifice of my identity, it's just the fact that I'm me, but in a setting where we can communicate.
You bring certain things to the forefront, let certain things in the background.
There you
like,
go.
You know context.
Right.
But Josette, just to kind of touch on what you were saying, although your experience is different from Mike, it's very valuable in this setting because there are people that feel the same way that you do, but now you shedding light on your story and saying this was my truth, how can the next person change what they've done? So definitely don't discredit or feel bad because your experience wasn't that. You're now creating a platform. You are now, your testimony is now helping somebody else say, okay, I feel the same way she does, so maybe I don't have to do what she did, you know. So everybody's story is just important, you know,
Well,
just
the fact
as important
of
as
sitting
the
down
other.
and having this conversation and saying those type of things, it's like people don't want to feel alone.
Absolutely.
And the fact of saying, you know, communicating this across, it's like, I'm not the only one.
Right,
I
absolutely.
thought I was the only one, but I'm hearing other people say it. I'm not the only one. So.
I think it's in that too. Like I said, my wife is mixed also. Like she grew up in a almost all white context. She grew up in South Dakota. You know what I mean? She was like the only black person around for miles, literally.
Wow.
And so it's been very interesting over the years too to like, even though, you know, we're the same amount black and white, you know, to have so many different conversations in terms of our different experiences and different ways that we reconcile things too. You know, so yeah, there's just an incredible diversity of how, because I mean, the thing about being mixed is there's no community for you to kind of socialize yourself into. You know, there is no roadmap because everybody's mixture is different.
Right.
So everybody has to kind of reconcile the different parts that make themselves up. You know, it's like a recipe. Everybody got different ingredients, so you got to figure out how to make this thing work. And I think that's the challenge that, unfortunately, yeah, depending on your family and your community, you know, folks need to make it easier, more challenging to give you that space to kind of hash it out.